Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today. This is the Tell It Like It Is podcast, and I'm your host, Alexi Bailey. Today, I have a very special guest, my neighbor Kai.
Heyo,
How
what's
you
up?
doing, man?
Good, good.
Help me
Not too
with the
bad.
last name. Ha!
Filzinger, right? Yes.
Filzinger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was very excited to talk about was Germany, the
Sure.
good old days.
Mhm. Sure, of course.
What's the first thing you would say?
About Germany in general, or about
Yeah.
Germany? Germany is a good place to live. Well, obviously, especially as a native German. Um, there's a lot I miss, um, especially when it comes to like just work life balance, securities.
Yeah.
That you don't have in the US. Is everything is more geared toward individualism, and that also comes with a lot of uncertainty.
Right. Right.
And I feel that in Germany, even though we're known to like overassure ourselves against every possible thing, that's true. Um, Also, it's kind of reassuring, you you crash somebody's car and you're like, all right, I that's shit and everything, but I don't have to worry that I can't pay the bill because I wasn't sure. It's not a life threatening or like not life threatening, but it's not an existential crisis. Right.
Right.
I feel in the US, people go through way more existential crises due to uncertainties from bills waiting in, be it healthcare, be it accidents, be it whatever, you know.
I
Yeah.
think I basically we've talked about it before, and the idea is like in Germany, there's way more social security. They take care of their citizens more, and it's like I think you talked about like the shock of like seeing the way people worry here. Whether it's a new mom or losing your job or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I see that with my colleagues, for example, right? When they go out of grad school, they need to line up their job. For the foreigners, sure. I mean, we need to do that because there's some visa issues. You don't have if you're not employed the whole way through. Even the Americans, they're pretty fixated on finding a good job really quickly that pays well, and which is also the main incentive. I feel like a lot of people choose, like for example, chemistry or something that's supposed to pay well later on. That might not be their main interest in general, but they know they can make a good life.
So people are running to the thing that they're going to make the most money, even though it's not what they want necessarily, because they're like, well, this is where the money is. And they're just,
I mean, there's overlap, right? I mean, if you're interested in, say, the sciences in general, that it makes sense, but you also want to make a good amount of money, then it makes sense to go into something like the engineering, different engineering things. Um, the physics, math, and chemistry. Chemistry is on board there with engineering, I would say. Like maybe take a little less up. It depends. But physics and math, for example, they're very different from what they studied, if that makes sense. So in chemistry, you do your synthesis, right? And you go to somewhere, work for a lab or something, do synthesis or control synthesis, do something that you learn. Where in math and physics, you often end up in things that crunch a lot of numbers. Like, for example, banking or
right.
Something where we're not interested anymore in like the essence of math that spark your interest in math, or the essence of physics, right, which is research. In my opinion, at least, you're doing something more applied. You need to be fair. If you want to work for industry and make money, you need to work in something applied, and like pure math and pure physics from like an academic point of view is less applied
Right.
than the engineerings and chemistry, I would say.
So what part of Germany are you from?
So southwest or center west, close to the French border, was usually like an hour drive from my hometown to the closest French town. Um, if, if you want to look at the map later, it's like between
What's the name of it?
Lampetal, very small, near Mannheim. And Mannheim, people might not know, but Ludwigshafen is like next door to it, like just over the Rhine River. And that is where the headquarters of BASF, this big chemical company, is at.
And you did your PhD in chemistry?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
What made you pick that?
Chemistry. To be honest, because I was good at it in school.
That was like your favorite class, right?
It was my favorite class, and together, together with math and sports. So, but yeah, chemistry was, I liked math for like, kind of like you like doing crossword puzzles or something.
Yeah. So,
But it was not, it was not what I saw myself in life doing. Chemistry was exciting because things blow up. It's like that, right? That's how you get the kids, to be interested in science. Things blow up, things smoke, they're colorful, and that was pretty cool. And yeah, it just stuck with me. And so started studying, going to college, studying chemistry. And in Germany, it's not like in the US where you have like a major, a minor, and whatever. You go in there and start a certain program like chemistry, and then you just take classes that are necessary for chemistry. You might take math, physics,
right.
then different kinds of chemistry, everything that kind of biology, and everything kind of like helps you to add to your chemical knowledge, right? Where here you might have, I don't know, literature classes if you're doing sciences, right? And that's not part of the program. What you can do is what in Germany would be called like a Studium Generale, which is the Latin word for general studies.
Mhm.
You can go to any class on campus, just take it,
Right.
but you won't get credits or something for the program. It's just out of your own interest, and because you pay tuition, you're free to go to any
And
class.
college was free, right?
Nearly free, yes. So I paid, I think for undergrads, I paid $250 or $300 a semester, which includes like subsidized food in the cafeteria, and the most important thing, public transport. So public transport, you get a new car. It's free. It's just like free in the city and the larger facility, which
You
might be
pay
like a
$300
miles.
per semester. You got a transit pass.
Mm-hmm.
Were the meals included or just subsidized?
No, they're subsidized, but they was. I mean, the whole meal was between €2, like let's say $2, not enough, $2 to $4, and that's included like soup, main dish, and dessert. It was very affordable.
Right. So the thing about Germany is like you guys have a long history. Like Germany is like a powerhouse.
Now, yeah, right now it is. Yeah. Yeah, the German history is quite. I'm not the best source for German history, but yeah, German history went through a lot of ups and downs, right? Very powerful. We have, which I think has to do with where we are in Europe. We have a lot of different countries bordering us, a lot of trade between them. So naturally, we had good commerce, and
But the reason why I mentioned that is because like, Mercedes, BMW, there's so much big infrastructure that comes out of Germany. Like Germany is like, I mean, France is nice, but like it's not as central to all of these international things. Like for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we had a good. I mean, I guess all Europe had quite good like academics in the 18th, 19th century already, right? Um, then there is something that Germans really love to say, but nowadays might not be that true anymore. That it's the country of the thinkers and poets, um, which it might have has been. Not sure about that too either, but definitely nowadays it's
Every country has like they big themselves up, like
right,
you
right,
know,
right.
good at this, and then you grow up and you're like, you know, you have this huge national pride, and everyone's walking around like my country's the best, and it's like,
Uh,
I,
yeah,
I think it's a human trait. It's fair enough.
absolutely. Yeah, but it's an interesting question that I hardly thought about why there's so much industry in Germany, especially like this advanced industry. And the only thing I can imagine is, we were lucky that we had a lot of coal, and coal was like the number one energy source, and iron. Um, and that is what I think we made a lot of money from in the 19th and early 20th century. And well, coal and iron is also the two things that you most likely need to do for. So yeah, it was kind of natural that since we had an abundance of resources that you need to conquer things, we kind of tended to do that.
Like, how would you compare the childhood you had now to the childhood that an average German's having these days? Is it still the same?
Never thought about that. I would think it's pretty
I
similar.
assume you ran outside, you know, there was very little TV.
But that was already the Saturday morning cartoons. So usually when my parents wanted to sleep in, on Saturday and Sunday, they were happy enough to just keep in front of the TV from 6 in the morning when I woke up to 10 or something when they woke up. But then usually it was like, yeah, cut it out, now we go outside.
Right.
Only later when like computers came out with my teens, then my parents couldn't tell me anything anymore. So I played a lot of games then.
What were the cartoons? Were these German cartoons or?
Oh no, American cartoons. Like I don't know if it was exclusively American cartoons, but like Nickelodeon came over, so we had some Nickelodeon cartoons. We had a lot
What do you remember watching? What was your favorite?
Yeah, we just talked about it. Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was, I think, from from kindergarten to maybe to middle school, like favorite thing ever. And then there were some other cartoons that were popular in the mid '80s in the US and just came over with like 5 years or 10 years later, to Germany. So it was like the mid '90s, beginning to mid '90s when it comes to us.
So were you thinking
Saber
like
Rider, Saber Rider, Thundercats.
Thundercats is like I don't think we've ever talked Thundercats.
Yeah,
No,
that might be true.
Yeah,
It is a
Thundercats is
fantastic.
like if you made that into a movie series today, it would be a dream. Like I would buy that in a second.
Yeah. They did a lot of, they just tried out a lot in the 80s and 90s.
Were you looking to America like oh, I want to go to that place, America?
Just to visit, never to emigrate or something.
How was America talked about like among the kids? Was it like a place of toys? Was it?
To be honest, hardly talked about. At least, let me think. At least in my youth, like in my early, let's say 6 to 16 or something. That's not much meant. You wanted to visit, to go there because for school, or pictures from New York, Philadelphia, California and stuff.
Was it like seen as better than Germany, or was it like a weird place to go see, like a theme park?
I think it was considered better than Germany, just in the sense that everything cool that we had, came over from America.
Right.
So And so we were like, yeah, we want to, that must be a cool place. But that changed very, very drastically in like around 2001, 2003. This time where um, 9/11 happened, where we had still solidarity with the US, obviously, to when Afghanistan and the Iraq war started. That is the time when there was like raging anti-Americanism in Germany.
Were people like burning stuff?
No,
Or, like,
German raging, like
Yeah.
you know, like they like people stopped idolizing the US, you know, which is funny because like one of the biggest albums in that time was this like American Idiot album from Green Day, which is an American band. So there's a little irony in there. But yeah, I think the feeling in Germany, maybe all over Europe, was what the feeling of the liberal left-leaning people here were when they saw the outcomes, how the US reacted to the September 11th attacks.
I mean, I went to Europe in 2006. And at that point, you know, as Americans, we felt, I don't want to say powerless, but we weren't in accord with what we thought, most of us, with what we thought was happening. And basically that's what you're saying. Like, all these things were happening and it wasn't nice.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I remember we had the shock and awe campaign. That was like the big bombs, and it was like,
oh, okay. Yeah.
It's like, we're gonna just bomb them, and it's only gonna take 3 days. And it's like, you know, they were dropping like billions of dollars worth of bombs just in the total of 3 days, and it's just like night and day. Just
So you're telling me your Blitzkrieg also didn't work? Huh? Interesting.
And it's crazy, you know, because now
I mean, it's hard
Afghanistan
to make this comparison, but
is still in the news, right?
What?
Afghanistan is now still in the news, and it's, you know,
Yeah.
that's come full circle.
Yep.
You know, 20 years later from 9/11, and yeah, it's kind of surreal because, you know, people were saying like, what does Afghanistan have to do with 9/11 and all of this and all of that?
Yeah.
We're bringing stability and like,
you're not invading another country to build schools, you know. That's what you tell people, but that's not what you do, right? I mean, you know, in Germany, the German army was not supposed to be an attacking force in the war. So we can only use our military for defensive purposes. Defensive purposes meaning, I guess there was like some ambiguity there, because the line that brought us into Afghanistan was that our back then defense minister said, well, we defend the German freedom at the Hindu Kush, which is region in Afghanistan, right? And back then everybody's already said that is bullshit. But they needed, you know, there was a significant pressure from the US to get their allies with them into the war. And for Afghanistan, we bowed. But for the Iraq war, that was just so, that the Iraq war was just, it was unreal that people really believed the lies that brought them into the Iraq war, you know? And I'm very happy and I'm thankful to this day to that one politician, you know, I'm not a big fan of it, that kept us, that was the defense minister back then, who kept us out of the Iraq war.
so you guys weren't a part of the Iraq war.
No. Only Afghanistan.
So it's funny you mentioned the Iraq war, because like I was talking to the kids about it, and I was trying to say, like, you know, I think it was Darlene maybe, and I was saying to her that to me it never made sense. You know, this whole Saddam Hussein has weapons, and all he has to do is let the inspectors in,
Mm.
and then that would prove there were no weapons, and then it would all be over. But he wasn't letting the inspectors in. And I'm saying, if you know America's gonna come in and blow up your whole country, take it over, kill you, do all of this, if you don't let the inspectors in, why would Saddam not let the inspectors in?
I'm not sure. I'm also not sure if that is the story that was told to the American people or if
That
that was
was.
the real story. You know?
Yeah, for sure. It was
might
this,
have not been.
the whole thing was that Saddam Hussein was not letting the inspectors come who would inspect because his nuclear, his uranium.
I think it was bioweapons, right? Wasn't it?
It was like
nucleus.
that was the thing. That was the hypothesis, was that he was developing nuclear weapons. So the inspectors were supposed to come in and just make sure that whatever his nuclear program was, it wasn't nuclear weapons. And he kept saying, no, you don't have nuclear weapons, and you're not letting the inspectors in. And that's what.
I know too little about that.
Yeah. But I'm just saying,
I mean, to be honest, Saddam Hussein was not the best man in the world, right? I mean, it's hard to defend a person like that. But yeah,
it's not about him.
It could be that he's just that was like a miscalculation on his part. He just maybe didn't believe that he was coming. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, no, at the end of the day, you know, like you said, you know, the people are not in agreement and the government's kind of doing things. You know, and like you were saying, that when the government tells you, you know, we have to go into Afghanistan because, you know, they're giving you some reason that you don't necessarily agree with. And the people, when they talk amongst themselves, they're saying, do you believe it? Like, oh, come on. And you know what I mean? So I part of what I do or want to do is that it's the conversation that the people have amongst themselves, right? Because I feel like the people don't really have a way to really say no. Like the politicians are saying, well, we need to do this. This is what's best. And the people are like, we don't need that. That's not good. And it's just, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think people would have the power and could say no. That's why why politicians put so much effort into trying to convince people, right? With like just all this patriotic blah blah, you know, we have to defend our freedoms in other parts of the world. We have this Patriot Act now that gives the president way more power than ever before, which might not be the best. It might not have been the best idea in the world. But if you call it a Patriot Act, you know, everybody's like, all right, it's something patriotic, it's something good, right? So yeah, that's also what I think what Germany took from, the one thing we took from especially the Second World War was that you can't really motivate people, you know, or convince people by appealing to their patriotism. Patriotism is like nothing. Like even that's probably what people sometimes see that in Germany you don't have flags out, you know, maybe doing a football game, the Olympics or whatever, you know, but like here there's an American flag everywhere, wouldn't see that. You don't have a flag. The flag, I mean, the flag itself is not seen as something, it doesn't have like any connotation to war or anything, or the pastime, the bad pastime, but it's just like it's a sign of a national identity, and people are afraid that this, or it is, no, people are not afraid. It was many times co-opted by the nationalists for their purposes. So people are very of people that use flags for any reason.
So someone who's all about the flags now, you kind of feel like they're talking you into something, or there's a political agenda to it to try to sway you.
If they appeal to your patriotism, it's always they always try to convince you of something, and usually if they have to go to patriotism or whatever, you feel emotional about. The reason they use your emotions against you, really against you, is because no sane person would say yes to what they are planning right now, you know. So the more they appeal to your feelings, the less trustworthy I would be to that person.
And that's gotten normalized now. It's pretty much or more.
To be honest, I'm not sure if it's more popular than ever.
So if a friend of yours, like you went to a friend of yours house and he had a flag in front of his house, like a good friend, yeah, you'd be like, hey.
I mean, there might be good reasons for it, you know, but
I love Germany.
if he's saying like, I love Germany, and I think the things we're doing are so great, it's a great place to live and stuff, you know, then that might all be right? But what is the reason you want to show it to people, and what gives you, what is it that makes you feel better to show that flag than just not showing that flag? Because it doesn't change if you still like live here or be happy in Germany or whatever. And showing the flag is, I mean, as a German, you know what it implies to other people, you know.
Right.
And so I would not believe my friend to be saying, oh no,
So
it's not having any connotations.
So there's
beyond that, you know.
A nationalist connotation to it.
Yes.
Okay. And there's some people who do support that.
Yeah, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. We did not get rid of our Nazis.
Is that synonymous, nationalists with Nazis? And
the lines are blurred.
You have to explain it to an outsider.
Yeah.
You know, Nazis was something.
It's a shorthand we use, right? And also maybe not fair to all of them. Because not all of them are barbaric maniacs that want to exterminate people, you know.
But they have some things in common.
They have things in common, and they have a political ideology that led to the barbarism that we saw in the mid 20th century.
Now, I know we talked about like refugees from Syria coming into Germany.
Yeah.
And that's happening a lot. Is that right?
Not anymore, but in the 2015 to 17, I'd say, was the peak of it. That is also where this the new right-wing party became pretty big. It started out as a more libertarian party, and then quickly turned to a very, very right-wing party, which obviously then was co-opted, but all the people from the literal Nazi party in Germany, you know, they kind of went in that party because it was more palatable to people. It was votable, you know.
Right.
But the Nazi party, you knew that only Nazis would vote the Nazi party. You couldn't tell people on the party, you know.
Right.
They were too close to the real Nazis that nobody of sound mind would vote.
So they have a thing. They have a thing with the with Syrians coming in.
Yeah.
Which is that they're going to change Germany or take away jobs.
It's the same thing everywhere, right? I mean, right. It doesn't help that they look different than Germans, right? So they're easily identified. And sure, yeah, I mean, every force, like the right wing, or even not even the strong right wing, also like normal liberal conservatives. No, not liberal conservatives, like centrist conservatives and liberals to that degree, especially in the labor movements, you know, they are kind of skeptical of immigrants coming in, and they usually tend to badmouth them in some way or form, right? The rights, because they have I don't know what the underlying reason is. In my mind, it is, I don't know, maybe still a leftover thing of like racial purity or whatever. And the left wing labor movements that see that those Syrians or the immigrants take away the jobs of mostly unskilled to medium skilled labor, and that is usually the people that these labor movements represent, right? So
Right.
they feel that unemployment in these sectors gets higher, right? And then they know that that is a good like political talking point to gain votes from workers, right? I mean that's why like workers like unskilled to medium skilled labor is often the first point contact with white workers. That's an easy demographic. That sounds bad. No, well, it's an easier demographic to get behind the idea of the foreigner that takes away what is rightfully yours.
So I have no interest in any parties or attacking any sides or trying to make a case for anything in Germany. But what I find fascinating is the commonality. When you talk to someone from this side of the world or that side of the world, you start to hear these common themes. We're not happy with what the government's doing. They're telling us one thing, they're kind of pushing us this way. Then you have the idea of the other who's seeking refuge and they're taking our jobs. They're telling us to hate them. And now they're in our neighborhoods and you're having contact with them in the grocery store. And now it's, well, I was told to hate you. And now you're bagging my groceries or,
That's the thing. If you, this whole thing about like foreigner works so long until like the fear of the foreigner works so long until you witness them, until you like talk to them and see, well, they're humans, right? Their goals in life is to be happy, to make their children happy. They're the same. They have the same needs and ideas than you have, basically.
Right.
Especially like on the basis is the same, right? You want to be happy. You don't want to live in fear. You want to make sure that your family is happy and safe, right?
Right, and they're not here to take over Germany. They're not here to. They just want to go to the grocery store and buy some groceries. So
right.
Go kick the ball in the park.
Exactly.
And if you see them, if they, when you hear the talking points, it's like they're coming, and you're like, no, it doesn't match.
Yeah, they're always seen as an invading force, which is funny because usually the country that they immigrate to usually came as an invading force at some point before, like I mean, these are the weakest of the weakest, right? A refugee is the weakest point in a society, right? They have hardly any rights. They have no wealth whatsoever. Sorry, they hardly have any rights. They have rights, but a lot of countries are like, oh, our citizens obviously have more rights, right?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
then like foreigners have less rights. Refugees have very good rights. I mean, they live in at least in Germany. They live for the longest time lived in refugee camps, right? Which are not great, obviously, because they live all cramped together and like I mean they have a roof over their head, and for an emergency situation, it's as good as it gets. But the transfer from camps to integrated living, in houses or whatever, that didn't happen. It took too long. And then, Germany expected them to learn German and stuff. But how do you learn German? How do you learn anything if you go to a class once a day for an hour, then go back into your camp with 100 or 200 other people, not sleeping because there's like 200. Try to sleep in a gym, with 300 people snoring and doing things,
if your basic needs are not met, you're
Right.
not gonna
Yeah.
be able to
Yeah.
be a contributing member to society.
That is absolutely correct.
Now, I know it's a bigger issue, but like you said, all of the things happening in Syria,
Mhm.
the war and people fighting and all of these things, it's what people are trying to get away from. And to some extent, Germany was involved in that.
Right. Oh, well, the war in Syria. Well, we weren't involved in that really much. Oh, I forgot. I honestly forgot.
I'll look into it. But
I don't
again,
wanna say
it's the parallels. It's
Yeah.
the parallels. So many people from Mexico come to America, and America has a lot to do with what's happening in Mexico.
That's
right?
true, yeah.
And now you're coming to America because you've already taken our resources and now you
Yeah.
have them over there. So we have to go to where the resources are because we want to survive.
Right.
So now the Mexicans are coming here 1 million every year because this is where the jobs are.
Yeah.
We wanted to stay home and pick fruit, but you won't let us, all of those complicated things.
Yeah, that's true. I think Syria. I forgot how Syria happened. I think that was like out of the Arab Spring, right? Like there are different countries in the Mediterranean and Orient, like for Western Middle East, rebelling against the government, right? You have Tunis. I think Morocco was fine because they like their prince back then or things like that. You had Egypt for.
Let
right?
me ask you
There's a lot of-
this. Where do you get your news from? Like now that you're here in the
Oh,
States.
okay. Like day-to-day news especially about Germany and something about US from German news sites. Like this is one
And you're planning,
public broadcasting basically, which everybody's watching every day.
what is it?
Like public broadcast. It's called the Day Show. Like, it's not the day. It's not synonymous with the Daily Show here.
Right.
It's
I'm
daily
sure the
news.
German knows.
Like there's 1 hour a day. Well, it comes to different hours, but like basically there's 1 hour a day where people where there's the news of the day. That's what I.
And you feel, and Germany's your home. You planning to go back home at some point?
I wouldn't say no. I mean, the thing is that what I think Leslie and I do well is we're happy wherever we live. We can make a good living, and if the country or whatever the place offers us something good, then we can think about staying. We're not bound to place.
Go back. Go back.
But obviously, I would like to see my family more often, right?
Yeah.
Like part of the deal, basically, of not living in Germany was, well, we would visit more often, and they could come over. But now with COVID, that I think we definitely felt more than ever how much we missed our family, not being there. The idea was like, all right, it's a 7-hour flight, right? You can do it. You can, if it need be, you can do it in a day, and then you can see your family. And but with COVID, that's something.
So you're a new dad, is that right?
Yeah, that is right.
How old is your son today?
4 months and 3 weeks, 2 days.
The hours.
No. Too much math.
How did it? What was the experience like? How did it feel for you?
But it's exactly what I want. It's the best thing that I have ever done. Yeah.
Ever made?
Ever made? Ever done? Yeah. Yep.
How do you feel when you look at your son?
Good. And I kind of think I know where the big question is going. A little bit fearful of the future, but not too much. I think so. What I want to do, or where I see my purpose for him is to teach him to deal with the world, to whatever world he will grow up in, right?
And he's an American.
He is an American citizen. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a part of his identity now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in your childhood, America was a hypothetical place. You were
Mhm.
watching American cartoons, and inevitably you wanted to come to this place called America.
Mhm.
And now your son has been born here.
Mhm.
He's gonna see America from a different lens,
Sure. Yeah.
going to school in America and
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, very different. Yeah, obviously, I don't know how that will feel for him, but I mean, I've seen other foreigners, other, like us, like having children here in the U.S. and raising them, and it's fine. I mean, they won't become better or worse probably for living here or living somewhere else. Um, I think it adds to their to their portfolio of how to deal with things,
Right.
to be able to speak two languages, how to see things from an American view, a German view, or European view, um, or just your own view, like a mix between them or whatever. It'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting having that guy around and arguing with me all the time, even though I'm obviously right.
Well, kids are a lot of fun in so many ways. They make you grow in ways that you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
not just when they challenge you, but I always remember like kids would say, why is that man homeless?
Mhm.
And you're like, well, he doesn't have a home or a job. Well, why? And like the six whys in a row, it like makes you reevaluate. And you're like, yeah, why is this happening? Like what? And and the things that adults don't talk about,
Sure.
kids will make you talk about.
Yeah.
What growing up? What was religion like for you? Did you grow up with a religion?
Nearly non-existent. But that was not due to a lack of belief in my family. My grandmother, my mother's side grandmother, right? She's very religious, very Catholic. And I think when my mom grew up and stuff was more, zealous is not the right word for it, but she was
So
more
did they-
behind them being also part of the community where with the grandchildren it was like, yeah, it's good if they're baptized. And so that's what my parents did. They baptized me, but then they
I have
forced me to.
I have friends who are Catholic,
Uh-huh.
and they said it's important to them that they pass that on to their children.
I think my grandma was like that. My mom and my dad were like, yeah, I don't know.
Why do you think? Did you ever ask them about that, or?
I think my mom. The thing is, that if your parent is has a strong opinion on something and you can't argue with them, about it, you kind of rebel against it. You have to, because it's something you cannot argue about, which to me means, well, your argument must be bad, right? If you instead of discussing it or explaining it to me, you're like, oh, you have to know that. That is how things are,
Right.
Not in institutes. That's not how you get people to be part of your community or whatever. And my parents, I think, were just like that. They were, especially my mom, grew up with this strongly religious mother. But by the way, like an absolutely non-religious father. Which actually is also funny because she was a staunch Catholic, my grandma, and he was like Lutheran Protestant.
Mhm.
And back then, it was still in Germany. It was still that these both the denominations. You didn't marry between these both denominations. So my grandmother always tells the story that the great grandmother said, well, told her that when she came home with my granddad that well, they should stop seeing each other right now because it doesn't hurt that much. Then stop at the beginning. But my grandma didn't listen to it. So even my grandma, that was like a staunch Catholic, or still is, always already rebelled against her really religious, um, mother by marrying my grandfather.
So if you look back at your childhood up to now, would you say that the culture in general is more secular, or was that more of a unique thing for your family?
I think especially in Germany, I think the society gets more and more secular. Yes.
So do you think that has to do with like the history of Germany, or do you think it's just
Took part, right? So if you look at a map, you have beautiful maps about like denominations in Germany. You see, well, what was Prussia, former Prussia, is mostly Lutheran Protestant. What is like the south of Germany, right, is more Catholic. Then you have this eastern part, right, the former East German borders, and they are all atheists, you know, like not all.
right?
The major denomination of belief is atheist. And that obviously has to do with the GDR and the Soviet Union disencouraging religion. So there's definitely a political, historical part in it. I'm not sure where I don't. I'm not sure what my opinion is or what I think where that comes from. That there's less and less religion in Germany. I think it's a general trend in Christian countries.
I think so at this point, for sure.
I don't know all of this, but for let's say the European Christian countries, and I also would say for the US, that religion has less and less of an impact in your daily life.
I think you said it well. Like there was a point when there is something to be gained politically by having these strong religious groups, because then the strong religious groups can support your political agenda. And I think at one point it was very much the way that politicians and politics was influencing the people and getting the people to support them. You're Catholic, he's a Catholic, support him. Or if you want to keep the other out, then we need to rally, everyone convert and support the church so that we can keep X, Y, and Z out. Yeah. And all of these things, and now there's a shift to more like, oh, we don't need to control them that way.
Right. I mean, there's still like the especially the conservative movements usually still use a lot. A lot of the base is still religious, and it works. I mean, it is a good like in and out group kind of dynamic, right? You form the in group, you basically have the in group already formed. They know already who's the out group, so you don't have to sell to them that your Muslim neighbor is worse than you are, right? Exactly. They know it already. So you just you kind of fill your like political agenda in that mold already, you know?
Right.
And that's what you sell to them. And it works. I mean, yeah. I don't want to, I sound very negative about religion, and I think religion can be a very good tool for one personally, you know, to develop yourself, to cope with life. That's all perfect, but you should also regard that it is a very powerful tool in influencing you to do something against your own interests.
Right. And I think that was the common theme you were saying about Germany with the flag and nationalism, and Christianity or religion can be another one of those. So it's like, all right, watch out for those people who are coming with this big religious thing, and they're like, why don't you just tell me what your views are instead of trying to tell me about your religion?
Right.
Why are you using that?
Right.
And I think that's very smart.
Why are you feeling to my emotions, right? When there should be a rational reason why your point is good enough.
Exactly.
You know, and if your point is not, the only reason why you would appeal to my emotions is you cannot sell me on the point being good, otherwise you have to tell me like, well, sure, we don't want to we don't want to build a wall, and keep those foreigners out, and let them starve in the desert. But we need to, right? Because otherwise we can't preserve our way. I mean,
but so much of these ideas, this is something that I really try to like draw attention to, right? People don't necessarily think either way, but when you turn on the news, right? I'm giving like an example in America. They'll say something like, tell me about your religion. So the guy's running for campaign, and instead of asking him a direct question about stuff, it's like, well, how long have you been a Catholic? And they ask them these kinds of questions, and then you're like, oh, so and so, the Catholic, and it's just like, why are you even mentioning that?
Yeah.
So then when people are talking in the street amongst themselves, it's like, oh, Trump's a Christian or so and so's this, and it's like they don't see that it's being sold in this kind of package,
right?
And
yeah, this is a really big thing that when I grew up, at least, was still very different from the US. That running for political campaigns was more about the content than the person, especially because in Germany you usually vote for a party, and then the party votes for the strongest party usually votes for who's chancellor. So at the beginning, you have a very good idea, however, who will be chancellor. But it's not directly, you don't vote for Trump, you vote for the party, right? And this changed in the last few decades, I'd say, in Germany, that it's more about people, and they're more like ad hominem attacks against them, like just, oh, look at, I don't know, what they do, what they wear, or whatever, and there's less the political program kind of like is not in front. It's not a front thing anymore.
Right.
But it's still more so than the US, because in the US I do not know what either party is doing. I just know, I don't know, that what Joe Biden's and Trump's jobs were before and what their wife do, and now it's more like a reality show than really, like, I don't know when Trump was voted into office, I didn't know what his program was. I knew that it's probably not the greatest program in the world. And the same thing is with Joe Biden. I don't know, because there's no constructive criticism or constructive discussion about a political program, where you can.
That's what concerns me. That's really what concerns me, is that the conversation is dumbed down to the point where you're talking about, well, what color suit did he wear? And you're like, this is a debate. You should be talking about the issues and their opinions, and not the fly on his head, or not like they kind of go off into these weird things. And for the reality portion, we can all laugh about it. But then when you ask people, what's the real issue, or what do they really think about this or that? And they're like, I don't know. And they say, those kinds of things. So much of what I do is not necessarily about politics. It's really about the everyday life. And one of the things that we have in common is that strong belief in people being social and connected.
Yeah. I think these are traits, that are universally good, I think. I don't think I've ever met, nothing is universally good or bad, but like usually in my life reality is that the people I've met were sociable, which you can talk to, even though they might have different opinion than I have, they are people I would like to be around, and they have part of the society,
Right.
Um, yeah. Um, yeah. That's, I lost my train of thought there.
So when we first moved here, well, when you first moved here, I met your fiance first,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, just
Uh-huh.
being social. She was like, "Oh, yeah, my husband's coming soon." I was like, I wasn't even sure. Like, it's like, okay, all right, I'll meet him. And basically, I think she was trying to say, I see your social, my social half's coming.
Yeah, that might be true.
When he comes,
That might be
then
true.
we'll figure this social dynamic out. Yeah. And I just wanted to acknowledge that, you've always been social. We've had so many like good get-together beers and all of these things. And for some people, it doesn't happen so naturally, organically. I get the sense that you talk to everyone and you're open. You're open
Yeah.
to talking to people. And when you encounter someone who's friendly, you engage them in a friendly way. And you're like, hey, let's hang out. Hey, let's do a thing. And that's relatively unique. And I think you said before, like, you grew up in that kind of culture.
Yeah, I think. Let me think about that. Because I don't think it's. I think I realized that you get further in life, or your life is better, if you are nice to people, which I think is a pretty straightforward thing now. It's a pretty straightforward idea. It's probably true. And so I come with it. That's my life. I'll try out like being nice to people, right? And if they don't, I'm either nice to people or I try to be non-confronting. If I see that we're not getting along, instead of full on going into an argument, I'm more like, all right, I'll I'll calm things down, and then I slowly move back out of the conversation, and I'm gone, and then I'm also not coming back, But yeah, I mean, if I so much like have a good conversation with somebody, or if somebody is like nice to me, I try to be nice. And usually that works out well.
How do you compare like socializing here versus what you're used to in Germany, the social culture?
Yeah, very different. I think it's true that not 100% true. Not it's there's always a move.
Right.
But in general, I think it's true that so in Germany, you go into a quote unquote close circle of friends. You say hi and stuff, and people are more cold towards you, more suspicious about it. Suspicious.
Yeah,
Suspicious is not the right word. Cautious towards you, which probably feels cold to outsiders, right? And what probably feels cold to me too, right? When I'm down in there. But then once everything warms up to each other, right? You integrate really, really fast, and you become a good friend. A good friend, which is not only like, oh, that's a good friend of mine, like in the US, and you see each other once every 2 years or something, and say hi or something. It's something that you hang out together, you go to bars or go to social events. You're part of their lives. And here in the US, I feel like that if you come into a new circle, you are immediately integrated. But hitting that friend stage takes a long, long, long time. Like, I'm talking not days or months, like maybe not years, but way longer than in Germany. You don't have this initial cool phase, where people are cautious about you. Less so, at least. But you just don't advance beyond like the niceness,
Superficial,
the superficial niceness.
Yeah. And what about like the Like,
But at some point you get there, you know. So that's what I'm saying. At some point you both get into that stage where you're good friends and you hang out and you're part of each other's life to a degree, you know.
Yeah.
But in the US, I think totally takes longer. Yeah.
So we're wrapping up. I wanted you to give me, is there something you feel like we're missing or something else you wanted to include?
Just my opinion on, like, I want to double down on what you said before about that you need to have your basic needs fulfilled to be a good part of to be a good part, a contributing part of society. Because that point I absolutely agree with. I cannot imagine that anybody can convince me otherwise. Because you need, you know, the reason why, one reason why so many people, once they get homeless, you know, never find their way back to society is, well, you have to apply for a job, right? But you need something to wear for the vacation, right? You can't just go there with your ripped shoes or whatever without a shower. So you need basic things, like you need a shower. You need it doesn't have to be a suit, but like presentable clothes.
Right.
You need a decent haircut. You need to be presentable. You know, that's how the reality is. You need to be able to write your application in paper or email or whatever form, which you don't have access to if you're homeless, right? Because you probably don't have a computer. You might not even have a phone, and you definitely don't have a printer or something. Right. And you only rely on like the charity of a person with a printer prints up. So that the infrastructure of you getting a job is, if you're homeless, is next to impossible. But if you have like let's say, it doesn't have to be like a basic income, but you know, when you're unemployed, that you still get like $1,000 a month. Let's say you don't even have to have that, as long as you have some kind of money from unemployment money or whatever. Right. You have a place to live, like subsidized rent or like even paid rent, you know, for the time being, which gives you access to electricity, food, the internet, printing, whatever, writing stuff, a shower, you know. That is like the absolute basic things you need to be able to apply for a job and be a constructive member of society. If you don't have that, it's not the homeless's fault that they don't find a job. It's the society's fault to not pick that homeless person up that might have landed there for whatever reason. We don't know. It might have been drug related, right? Even then, it's not their fault. You know, people make stupid mistakes in their life, and just because they do it once, you know, they're not less of a human because of that.
Can't write them off.
Right. You can't write them off.
If not, you have to support them one way or the other.
Right. Right. Society has to. Well, the reality is, I think, is that a lot of people that live on the street do not survive longer than 2 to 3 years if they don't get picked up somehow, you know, by any charitable events. So, and the thing is, you can't rely on charity. It's also with all this GoFundMe pages and so, and the thought of charity, of like rich people donating a lot of money to things, that is just too flaky, you know. It's not organized enough. Right. It's very random who gets what, you know. I think that is a thing that the government, like a federal government, or maybe even a state government, the government needs to take over. It needs to be paid by taxes. So
I agree. We need help.
Yeah. People need help, and everybody needs help. Like if somebody says he's a self-made man, then no man or woman or whoever is a self-made person. They all benefited from some way or the other from society. So.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, man. Thank you for taking the time.
Of course.
Thank you for joining me today. We made it happen. Thanks for being a guest.
Of course. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
See you again soon.
See you, everybody.
All right.